Well, it's quite the honor that I have today. My guest is Mario Andretti. He needs no introduction. So thankful of Mario joining me on Waltrip Unfiltered. Our podcast has had a lot of great moments, but this is big for me. When I grew up, I was a kid of the '60s, and Mario was the driver of the year in the '60s, '70s, '80s. So many accomplishments. Won the Daytona 500. But Mario, I just want to say thank you for joining me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. You're very kind. Very kind. Too kind.
Well, it's been fun lately. I watched you join Clint Boyer and the boys on Fox Sports for a little iRacing, and I read on your Twitter where you said, you can teach an old dog new tricks. What was it like getting on iRacing and hanging out with those boys?
Well, I had to get in the act a little bit. Obviously, along the way, I got myself a rig, and I got invited with this Legends program that Torque Esports is having. And anyway, it was fun. I screwed up a little bit because I forgot they were qualifying, and there was 5 minutes of qualifying for the race, and I was, messing around, and I said, "Oh my God, gotta go!" And then I only had a minute and a half left, and I only had the outlap that counted, so that put me in the back, and I got hit in the back at the start. Got spun, and then so it was trouble from there. But nevertheless, I had fun doing it, mixing it up with the boys. They're all, it was the over 40, but they're all 40 years younger than I am.
Well, it's really...
So I'm trying to put together one like the over 70s, then it'll be a little more fair.
Yeah. You know what I find about iRacing? I go down to Denny Hamlin's house. He lives close to me, and I'll drive his rig, and I get just as worked up as I did if it's a real car. You forget, it's not a race car. You're into it. It's competition. Did you have that same sort of spirit?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, if you want to kill some time quickly without knowing, I can get on there. I can get wrapped up on some of the tracks, and I can be on there for 3.5 hours. I work up a sweat, and I look, oh my goodness, I thought it was 10 minutes ago. You really do get wrapped up in it because you find that you try to look for that feel. We're so used to the real thing that sometimes it takes a lot of adjusting, to try to get a feel of these things. It's you lose the back end or whatever, and think, oh goodness, no warning type of thing, and that's the part that really gets you. So it's pretty disciplined, it's a real art in itself, So I know that even at Indy, you had some of these gamers. This dude from Holland, really a great guy. He's one of the best in the business. He's telling me how the line to drive at Indianapolis, So I figure, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, thanks for the help, right?
Yeah, thanks for the help.
I used to do pretty good there myself, but I really appreciate it. That was your sentiment, I bet. I mentioned at the top that you were the driver of the decade or driver of the year in '67, in '78, and '84. 3 different decades. The only racer ever to do that. Can you help me understand what it was like transitioning from the '60s to the '70s and the '80s and having the same amount of success and being such a great racer all those years?
Well, I think you probably know as well as I do, it begins with love and passion, for what we do. And the fact that, I've been able to dodge a lot of bullets along the way and then continue my career without really interruption, that's huge. And I could never get enough of driving. So, if, like for instance, NASCAR, they got 36 races, and everything. You're not looking for much else. But like in IndyCar, for instance, they would have like 19, 20, 21 races. And to me, that wasn't enough. So I would always be looking for something else, sports cars. And when I had the opportunity, like in the 60s, I had a great relationship with Ford. So besides the Le Mans program, the sports cars, they also, stock cars, with Holman and Moody. And I developed really a great relationship with them. And then, of course, John Holman, Ralph Moody, and that group there. And so if I ask, can I do a couple of races? Oh, yeah, sure. They'd always have a car. And it's nice to be able to, move over to another discipline, but not just to move over, but we be with the top team. As you got to have the equipment. And, and in 66, I remember that my first experience on the oval, actually, even though I had some experience with the sports car there where we run the banks, but with the stock car was with Smokey Unick. And the reason that he wanted me, I gathered later, is because he wanted to experiment. He didn't want a driver to tell him how to set up the car. And he had, honest to goodness, he had the car set up square because he felt that you didn't need any cross weight or anything because of the banking. So, he had to prove his theory on me. And I'm out there. I mean, I'm really fighting that turkey. And I'm thinking, and the guys, I said, how can these guys be so fast and drive an animal like this? I thought maybe all the other cars were the same. And I didn't even know where to begin, where to tell them what the car is doing. So anyway, the following year, when we unloaded with one of Holman Moody's cars, I went out there and said, oh my God, this is a race car. All of a sudden it's telling me what a race car should tell you. And then I was beginning to have some fun. So at that point, however, I wasn't getting the engines that some of those other dudes like Freddie Lorenzen was getting. So I had to do a little bit of lobbying. And John Holman was really on my side. Ralph kept saying, well, I don't want to get involved in the politics, but, and there's politics, as you know. So, but yes, but John helped me out, and we finally got a decent engine in there, and then we were flying. But the big part is though when the single car qualifying, talking about the 500, we're on it. Single car qualifying, you had a choice of the angle of the spoiler that you were going to run. Mm-hmm. You had to race with it. Because I wasn't pulling any revs, so I ran with a 60-degree spoiler. And then I had to race with it. Everybody had 45 degrees. And in the race, I was so loose. But the car was loose, but manageable, if you know what I mean. There's loose and then there's loose. And I had to lead, so I had everybody confused, Even your brother kept saying, well, you had everybody scared. I said, well, I was scaring myself. I said, well, but as long as I was leading, I was doing okay, because in those days, the way the aerodynamics was, to be able to follow somebody, you had to run below, below them, and to keep the front end down. And that was perfect, was keeping me my back end down. I didn't dare have anybody pass me on the outside, because I would have taken me right around. So anyway, it was an interesting race, but like I said, it brought us so much satisfaction. And then to go into sports cars, and then, in back of my mind, I always had Formula One too, because that's where it all began for me. Michael, when I was just a kid in Italy, that's how I fell in love with the sport, through Formula One, my heroes, Ascari and Ferrari and all that. So along the way, I felt that I needed to give my career, a fair chance at Formula One. And I had, before I did it full time, I had some pretty interesting events, like, I sat on pole the first race ever that I ran in Formula One. The guy was second was none other than Jackie Stewart. So it was a good day. And then the first race that I won in South Africa in 71 with Ferrari, Jackie Stewart finished second to me. So, it was good. The next race that I won, also Jackie Stewart was second. And so it was, a great feeling, giving me confidence. And I did a few other, races part-time on and off. And then in 75, I decided, I said, I got to devote some time. I was already 35 years old. I said, I got to devote some time to Formula One if I'm going to do it. And a lot of good things happened. And again, I moved around quite a bit. But even when I was doing Formula One, I was driving for Roger Penske here. And we won a couple of IndyCar races along the way. And then also, I won the iRock championship that year too, So again, I just could never get enough, I just love driving so much, still do, with all the messing around that I do. But it's been my life and it's my element. If I have a headache, I sit in a race car, it goes away. So that's what it is with me.
I have to tell you that I keep having to pinch myself because I'm talking to Mario Andretti and we're talking about all these great stories, and it makes me so happy that that you take the time, that you want to share your stories. It means the world to me. So I'm not going to say thank you anymore, I promise, but I want you to know how much it means to me, the person you are. I tell you what I did this morning. I called my brother and I said, Daryl, what kind of Mario Andretti stories do you have? And he said, well, he wrecked me in the iRock race one day. I remember that. He said, but
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I told him I didn't think that was true.
Couldn't have been a big a deal because I don't remember it. Tell
Well, if you get wrecked by Mario Andretti, I mean, that's I wished I had gotten wrecked by Mario Andretti at some point in my life. But the car you won the Daytona 500 with, he has that car. I know you know that. He brought it up to Pennsylvania for you.
Yeah, of course. That's why I wanted to chat about it a little bit, because it was a good chassis, and I think Daryl has some good, good time with it. When he put that Mercury sheets on there, Mercury body on it, and and it was on display at the Speedway Motel, where they had a nice display of a lot of my stuff there to see an exhibit, which was really nice. Again, like I said, looking back, these are, moments that are so important in your career, like a lot of things that even people don't pick up on. For instance, like in Formula One, it's really a big deal because, every race happens in a different country. And it's a big deal for any driver, any given country, to be able to win their own Grand Prix, And in 77, I won the U.S. Grand Prix, which is my home Grand Prix at Watkins Glen. But later in the season, I won the Italian Grand Prix, which is my native. So, when I look back and people ask you, what are your moments? These are some of the moments that doesn't register in a lot of people, but they sure register with me, So that's when I start counting my blessings, just wonderful. That motor racing has been with me, and the family, of course. When you look, Michael, on both sides, with my twin brother Aldo, he was not as fortunate, of course, just like my younger son Jeff. But nevertheless, Aldo produced three other. We both sides have 3 generations going, and that's what we love. That's what we talk about. That's what the girls love to hear all the time, from us. So can't you guys talk about anything else?
Yeah. Well, no, we don't want to. We don't want to talk about anything else. I want to ask you specifically about moments. You talked about 77 winning in America and in Italy. I'm trying to understand, how did Daytona rank winning that race and all your other successes at the time and as you reflect now back on it?
It was huge. And actually, as time went on, it became bigger because of the magnitude of that event. The tradition that it's accumulating every year, and it still remained a jewel of stock car racing. Because of it started everything with the super speedway and all of that. So. Again, it's the same thing as, you go out, if you would go out and win Indianapolis, it'd be the same feeling. And again, like I said, it's to me, huge, no question. But in those days, you went on to the next race the following weekend. The following weekend we won Sebring with Mark IV with the Bruce McLaren, the 12-hour Sebring, for Ford. So, and that, what was interesting about that weekend was that AJ and I were running Atlanta and Sebring. And of course, Sebring happens on a Saturday. And so Ford had a plane for us qualifying at Atlanta, qualifying at Sebring. And at Sebring, that race was, oh my goodness, it was the hottest race I ever had, because there was a lot of wind and a lot of the air intakes for the cockpit got plugged up, with debris and paper and so forth. And the only two drivers in those days, so Bruce and I were just totally spent. And then the next day I had to run the 500 miler in Atlanta and ran, and I think it was 492 laps, and I blew the right front. I was running third. And then I sat in the hotel room for 3 days with my wife pouring water on me, trying to revive me. It was great moments, though. I felt like did pretty good couple of days work, that weekend.
Yeah, I was blessed. I got to run Sebring and Le Mans and Daytona in a Ferrari, and my memories of that are just amazing because, I was a kid, grew up in Kentucky, and I'm driving a Ferrari down the back straightaway at Le Mans, thinking to myself, how the hell did I get here? To fast forward, 30 years, how did this happen? And I wanted to ask you about that track specifically. I've never raced a more difficult track, just because of the technique that it had, some wide open areas and some technique that you had to have as well to be versatile on that type of track. What was Le Mans like that? One of the toughest tracks to you, or what was the most challenging track that you ever raced on in any discipline?
Well, I think when it comes to most challenge, it was the old Nürburgring. 14 miles long. And I'll tell you what, you had to live there to be able to really learn it properly, to be able to feel comfortable. And there's so many places that you didn't want to miss, And so quite honestly, Le Mans, to me, is a track that really flows nicely, because, the speed is, this great speed, amazing, top speed for the Mulsanne straight, even though now it has the chicanes. I don't know if you ran when it had chicanes, but even with the chicanes, the speeds with the prototypes are up in around 240 mile an hour range, but again, it seemed like the track just flows nicely. I love driving Le Mans. I really, really did. But as far as other tracks, there's so many. I mean, it's in so many of the Formula One tracks are really, really, very technical, to drive.
You enjoy Spa?
Yes, I'm doing Spa on the simulator. I'm loving it, Yeah. And and I did a test of Spa. I thought I was one of the first ones to do with a Lotus 79 to do the Eau Rouge flat. As far as you could tell, but nevertheless, but in those days, unfortunately, we didn't run Spa. We just did a test there because the longer version, was too dangerous. But we did a test, and then Zolder was the place. But I had wanted Zolder. But like I said, where else? What else was? I lost my train of thought there.
I was going to tell you about Eau Rouge. When I raced there,
tell me about Eau Rouge.
I renamed it "Aw Shit" because I would go in there, and I'm so happy you told me you're the first to run it flat, because I went in there.
I think I am.
Saying I'm going flat this time, and I'd go down that hill and I'd let off the gas. And I'd be damn, and I'd run the rest of the track for 3 minutes just to get back there to try again.
But you just wait, you wait for the compression, you know, like the first part, then the compression. And that gives you some sense of safety, like, you know, you really get the grip.
Yeah.
And then the second part, when you start turning left, you got to do it very gingerly, you know. But, that's an incredible track, actually. And that Eau Rouge is the corner.
Yeah.
Corner, yeah.
It's my favorite memory of getting to do the sports car was running Spa. What a thrilling experience that was. You've had many checkered flags, obviously, and you're a legend and just a great guy that I love speaking with. But I wonder, like, I remember a spectacular wreck you had testing in Indy that looked crazy. What was that? What was the scariest wreck you ever had? What was the worst moment that you had?
Well, I think you're talking about while I was testing in 2003 at Indy, and actually this was like an insurance run for Michael. One of Michael's driver, Tony Kanaan, had an accident in Japan the race before Indy, and had a crack on his wrist. You know, just a small fracture. And he wasn't sure that he could qualify the car. He was pretty sure that he could race it. So we're coming up to, to Indy activity, but there was an open test before that. And Michael says, Dad, do you mind? He said, I'm trying to find somebody that can probably potentially qualify the car, to be able to save the sponsor, so to speak. I said, yeah, I'll do it. I said, if I have a proper test, and at that time I had been out of an IndyCar like 9 years because I was 63 years old in 2003. And quite honestly, Michael, I went out there and I was in my element pretty quick.
Yeah. A lot of speed.
The car was set up quite nicely. I had Tony's engineer and so forth. And I had the confidence, and so by myself, we kept trimming, and I ran by myself, but toward the end of the day, by myself, I was quickest, like a 227. And I figured I wanted to put like a 230 or plus, on the board. And right at the last run of the day, I picked up a good tow with Kenny Brack, was Foyt's car, actually, with another Honda. And going into turn one, he blows an engine, but he was far enough that, the turn one is kind of blind. And I didn't know, because of testing, you don't get that kind of information, from the corner work. So when I arrived there, I just saw, pieces all over the place. And this was the first test, the first running that they did when they put the safe walls out there. And those wedges that is supposed to, take the impact. But at that point, they had them all loose. So when he hit, the wedge flew out and landed in the middle of the track. When I arrived there, and the telemetry said 222 miles an hour at the exit of turn one, I had pieces all over the place, and this wedge was right in the middle of the track. And I hit it, and it dislodged the front, the downforce.
Yes.
And as soon as the car picked up attitude, it started flying like an F-16, and it just went over, a couple, 3 times over. And at that point, I thought I was hoping they wouldn't have any vacancy upstairs, because I thought it might hurt. But I was lucky, I landed on 4 beautiful Firestone tires, and and I was okay, but yeah, it was a scary moment for sure. It really was.
I love that. Hoping there was no vacancies upstairs, because I've had that feeling a few times
Sure.
in my career. I gotta tell you something. That I was speaking with Bobby Labonte this morning, and Bobby Labonte told me a story about you. I wanted to share it and how much it meant to him. So he said he's walking down the hall at a hotel or convention center or something in Las Vegas, and he can see about 100 feet ahead. He said he's by himself, and he says to himself, that's Mario Andretti. That's Mario Andretti coming this way. And he said, do I bother him? Do I say anything to him? And Bobby said, you said, well, hello, Bobby. Great season you're having so far. It was 2000 when he won the championship. Great season you're having so far. Really appreciate what you do. And that, those type of moments, the things that the way you're able to touch people, God blessed you or gave you this incredible gift. And I just want to tell you that it meant the world to him that you recognized. And he said, you know what he did when I won the championship? He sent me a fax. That was back when we had fax machines, Sent me a fax. Congratulations.
It meant the world to me that he recognized me. Actually, so I had no idea that he would, but I mean, I follow all you guys. Obviously, it's like a big family. It's some of us have raced together, but most of you are a little bit younger. So, but nevertheless, the Labonte brothers and the Waltrip brothers and on and on and on. So we've all been around a while.
Who's your favorite driver to watch these days, whether it be in NASCAR or IndyCar? Or who really gets your attention nowadays?
I think I keep an open mind. I really sometimes I tweet and I figure, they're all my favorites. I just you like the winners.
Yeah.
And to me, obviously, quite honestly, I mean, it's the guys that actually that run up front, that they're the usual suspects. They're the ones that I have the most appreciation for because they have that edge, that who doesn't love winners, and again, along the way, there's always somebody coming on, and there's a lot of young talents now that really interesting to watch. Actually, the cycle is normal there, with drivers retiring and so forth. And you got some of those young talents coming through. And both, NASCAR and IndyCar and Formula One, have some really, really interesting young lads coming on that are definitely the future champions. And that's why I couldn't wait for the season to get going, just to watch some of that just coming to be. And again, that's what makes our sport so interesting. And for us, they're really, so involved in it. And there's always, it's never blah. There's always something new, always something great to look forward to. And the sport is really so well placed, nowadays with all of the, objects that we have to deal with, and that's why we all chomping at the bit. And I said the other day I was talking with Jim France, and I said kudos to NASCAR guys for getting started first, even though at the moment we have no spectators. I hope that's not for long, because we need to have the spectators. This is show business, and of course it's on TV, but we want the live spectators. We want to talk to the fans, and it's the human spirit is so much more alive, when we have that, as you could see, and that can't come soon enough. But again, at least we're rolling. NASCAR is rolling. IndyCar will be rolling this coming weekend in Dallas, and let's get it started. I'm chomping at the bit to get in my two-seater. It's it's on my shoulder right there.
I got in your two-seater one day. I was thrilled to do that. That thing's crazy. I loved your camper too. Was that your camper you were pulling to the races one day?
Yeah. That's what I take to the races. So I can sit on the side of the road, and pop a beer or something, and then do a little R&R.
Speaking of popping a beer, I got a beer. I made some beers. Tell me a driver you'd like to sit down with and just have a beer and talk about times. I think you're, anyone would say this is probably pretty correct. You've got AJ Foyt, Mario Andretti, Richard Petty, arguably in my time, three of the most famous racers. Definitely add Dale Earnhardt in there. Four of the most famous racers ever. how were your relationships with those guys? Would you like to have a beer with them?
Oh, all day, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's you know what, even talk about AJ, especially, you know, the way he's mellowing now. He and I are best friends.
Ah, did you see that one coming?
Lifetime, I was going to have that experience, but even one couple of years ago, during his birthday, I tweeted to my BFF, "Happy birthday!" and he asked his son Larry. He said, "Hey, what the hell is BFF? What does that mean?" My best friend for life, you know.
Right.
And it's been nice. He's even called me this year for my birthday. Can you imagine that?
That's awesome.
So every time, like, you know, I see any of you guys, and, you know, it's a joy. It's a real treat because, again, you know, you talk about, give me that hat. You talk about Richard, for instance, you know, the king. You know, look at his glasses. Put them on.
All right.
How's that?
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be a king, you know, like so far he got me the hat, you know, but I'm almost there.
I think it's a great look for you, sir. You'll have to tell me about your
They're autographed. These are autographed.
That's precious. That's perfect. Tell me about your memoirs. I mean, I cannot wait. When's it going to come out and how's it going? What's the process like? Are you enjoying it?
Well, I'm enjoying it to some degree because I don't think I would have attacked this project if it wasn't for, you know, this lockdown. And you know, even though I'm staying busy. I mean, I got, you know, always something going. I mean, there's interviews and like today with Zoom and all that sort of thing. So it's very popular because our world, you know, is full of energy, you know, all pent up and, you know, not just in the United States, but all over. I mean, and with the technology you have today with Zoom, you know, you know, you interview Colombia, you interview in Australia, you interview in Britain, Great Britain, Italy, and so on. You know, and I get a lot of that, and I think it's great, you know, because it's amazing how it shrinks the world.
Mm-hmm.
But the memoirs, again, it just gave me the opportunity to just fill the time and devote the time to do this, and it probably would have taken 3-4 years, you know, if I would have done it just while I was still, you know, normal, my normal routine. But now it's probably going to take quite a bit shorter, you know, because we designate. I have a really great author with me that helps me through it to put things in perspective properly, you know, and again, it's a guy name is David Fisher, and I'm enjoying recollecting, you know, a lot of private things, as you know, like things that done with my wife that you know, before there was no reason to really talk about, but how meaningful certain moments were all around, not just for that time itself, but what it meant in the big picture of it all. And, you know, the travel that we did with the family, you know, my wife traveled with me, you know, to 6 continents. You know, that's what I raced in. And at one time or another, you know, there was just great moments there, and to just really put in perspective and be able to talk about and reminisce. And so you only do those things when, you know, when there's a reason for it like this. And again, I don't know. I still don't know how it's going to wind up, but we're just throwing stuff together, just trying to remember just things that are meaningful that I would never even talked about. You know, I have you know, 3 or 4 books out, you know, and that we did ourselves. But it was all primarily just about the career, just talking about the nuts and bolts of the career. But this is more, as you say, there's more than just a career. There's a life, to us as well. And that's what the memoirs are all about. So, we'll just have all those things in there, and but we'll see what comes out. It's probably going to be just 10 pages.
No, it's going to be 1,000 pages. There's so much to tell and so much to share. And I was blessed. I wrote a book and it did okay. And, people just said, I read your book and it made me smile. It made me happy, and it's a gift that God has given you and me, certainly to much less extent, that we can make people's day better by sharing a story or smiling at them. And I know how much you appreciate that. And I think it's really cool that you're sharing those stories.
Yeah. Again, it's, like I said, out of all the negatives that this pandemic is bringing to us, this could be a positive that comes out of what I'm doing, I guess, for myself at this stage of my life anyway.
There's a picture my producer buddy from Fox Sports, Mark Smith, shared with me. You won a race in Eldora in Labor Day of '66, and there you are at Eldora with your sprint car. And then you go to Daytona in February of '67 and win the Daytona 500. I love that versatility, the ability to win at Eldora and then go to Daytona and get it done there too. That tells a whole lot about the talent that you had behind the wheel. If we needed another example of that.
But you know what? When I look back, it says something there that when I look back, the opportunities that I had, especially in the years when I was doing the Formula One, go from Formula One to a dirt track. That in 1968, my debut was supposed to be in Italy at the Italian Grand Prix. And so, but I was running for the championship. So on that Saturday, they were running the Hoosier 100 at Indianapolis. So I did a deal with the organizers that they were going to waive the 24-hour rule that was in place at that time for any FIA race, and all the USAC races were part of the FIA. So anyway, that was all agreed. So here I am Friday. I'm qualifying for the race because in those days, every time you were on the track, there were like 2 practices Friday, 2 practices Saturday, but the times counted. The quickest time of the weekend was your qualifying time. So I really had to get it on the morning practice. And I was, at that point I was like 1.7 seconds quicker, but that was only the first practice. And then I took a plane and of course, came to New York, then Indianapolis. I ran the Hoosier 100 on Saturday and I finished second to Foyt, and then overnighted to Italy for the Grand Prix the next day. And it was so funny. I mean, it's just made it there, and there was a protest. Ferrari protested. I think it's Ferrari because it was a bunch of Italians there, and Colin Chapman couldn't speak Italian, so, and they would not allow me in a room to contest it, and the hell they won't let me start. My car actually was 7th on the grid, and they won't let me start, and so anyway, but the point I'm making, you're going, from Formula One to a dirt car, and then back to Formula One. I used to love that.
That is incredible.
I used to go from Argentina to DuQuoin, Illinois, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I would love to be racing today, quite honestly. I love, with the cars that are running today and everything. But I will not give up, the opportunities that I had over the different decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, and part of the 90s. Only because of that diversity, to be able to jump around, you could say you go from a stock car to a sports prototype to a dirt car. you know, in '74 I was running Formula 5000, and I won the national dirt track championship, you know, with the champ cars, you know. So and again, that's what I love the most. And Michael, I'll match my love for driving a race car with anybody on this planet. You know, I live for that. And I know because it's probably because when I was young and I was just still dreaming about it, it seemed like such an impossible dream. I mean, a truly impossible dream. You know, going through after the war, we were obviously product of the World War II. And, you know, we became refugees, and then, you know, obviously at the young age, but you sense, you know, the instability, you know, from your parents and everything else. And then, you know, come into this country, I figure, okay, I don't know, you know, I knew what was going on in Italy. I was hoping that I would start driving motorcycles, racing first, and the easiest way, you know, to get in. And then we come to America. And we arrive here in June 15, on a Thursday. And on a Sunday, I discovered there's a half-a-mile dirt track. I had no idea what a half-a-mile dirt track was all about, but it was a lot of noise. And Aldo and I just booked, you know, we went out there and looked at those cars and figured, man, you know, maybe America won't be so bad after all.
Yeah.
And, you know, 2 years later, we started building a car, stock car 4, you know, to race locally with 4 other buddies. And what did we choose? We chose a Hudson. Why? Because like Herb Thomas and those guys, you know, they were cleaning house in NASCAR, especially on the short tracks. Because the cars were, you know, there was the only car that had unibody construction, was so rigid. And, you know, they held the crossweight and everything. And somehow one of our buddies, you know, I had no idea, but this guy that one of our buddies was Charlie Mitch, you know, he was pretty informed about NASCAR even at that time. And he decided, you know, to go in that direction. And that was the best thing we could have done. But anyway, you know, here we go in America. 2 years later, we started building a car, and I was 17 then. And I figure you had to be 21 in those days to drive professionally because of insurance or whatever. And so I figured we got 4 years to do it. And then, but the car was done in 2 years and we owed some money. So we had to go earn. And so we had a local editor of the local paper here, a guy by the name of Les Young. He fudged our birth date on our license. And I started driving in 19, and I never looked back, you know, just that's when my career started in 59 in March, and just straight through, you know, never interrupted. I was, you know, so lucky, you know, as you can imagine. But the opportunity that this country provided for us, for me, and for the family, it was just golden. Couldn't have happened anywhere else on the planet. And again, when I look back, and this is why I still have the same love for the sport that I had then, because it's something that potentially I felt that I couldn't have. And just to have it and to be able to just keep it and keep going, it's something that, again, I relish today as much as I did at the very beginning. So,
well, I just have to tell you the joy that you brought to so many because of your passion, your heart, and your love for auto racing. It touches me, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate you joining me today and letting me hear some of those stories and making me look more forward to getting your memoir when you get it completed, and just your kindness and your, you know, taking the time for us today. I appreciate you very much.
My pleasure, my friend. Anytime. Hope to see you.
Yeah, I hope to see you at the races soon.
At the races soon, you bet.
Wow, what an honor. I'm so thankful that Mario took time to spend with us and share those great stories. I'm looking forward to reading his memoir when that comes out in the fall, but It just goes to show you what a champion he is, but what a great human being Mario Andretti is to just take time out of his day to chat with me so that we could share our podcast. You can get us on all of Fox Sports social channels. Those platforms were available. Also, you can go to your favorite podcast app, obviously, to watch Waltrip Unfiltered. I've had a great day. I'm going to have a beer now and just relish in the fact that a legend like Mario Andretti would spend time with us today. So thanks to Ford Martin, my producer, Neil Foley, all the folks at Fox are putting together Waltrip Unfiltered and letting me live a dream. Getting to just hang out with Mario Andretti. Doesn't get much better than that. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next week.
For more great NASCAR on Fox content, subscribe to our channel. It's somewhere right around here.